All right, Steve Wood, recovered alcoholic. Welcome to Big Book Compendium presents the Great Reality Book Study. I almost tripped over myself. So last time we talked about how Bill writing the steps and how each step evolved from the yellow sheet of paper to the manuscript to the final piece. And the purpose of that was just to show you how the steps came together in a very, graceful way. And it's always neat to study that stuff. And you know, the thing about it is, um, we have to look at the steps are very divinely inspired. And from now on, this book study is going to shift a different way. It's not going to be as much history and stuff. I have a little bit maybe here and there, but not much. So this is my thing I love to do, and that's how to do the steps and to build that up to the mighty 4 through 9. You have to get into step 3. We'll be spending the next 3 weeks on step 3, and I'm going to begin with a story. So in Colorado, there's which at one time was the largest oak tree in the world. Monstrous tree, huge tree, gigantic tree. And when it met its demise, destruction, it was over 500 years old, maybe more. It was there when Columbus discovered America, when the Pilgrims settled on Plymouth. In 4 centuries, it was struck by lightning 14 times, survived thousands of rain, snowstorms, frozen over a dozen times, caught on fire a dozen times. It was hit by, avalanches and survived, the worst near-death experiences, but it survived. But in the end, what killed it was something smaller, a speck. It was an army of beetles ate their way through its bark and gradually, slowly ate away its core, killing its inner strength and leveling that tree to the ground. Um, you got to think of it. Age did not wither it. It survived fire and ice, and yeah, it was killed by something you could smash between your fingers, your thumb and your finger and your thumb. And my point of bringing that story is that we're no different than that tree. We survive near-death experiences, overdoses, drunk driving, driving the wrong way on bridges, driving off hills, drinking poison, smoking poison, violent physical abuse, fights, infections, all sorts of stuff that only brought us to, like one knee to the ground. And in the end, is what we didn't see that gradually ate away its core that would kill us spiritually. Our hearts were eaten away by resentments, fears, guilt, pride, self-esteem, selfishness, guilt. And unlike that tree who fell to the ground, we can be put back together again. We don't have to stay broken and down on the ground, which that's the joy of the program. Because you can walk in here a lot with nothing and have your life come back, even more than you've ever imagined. So if you live in darkness, that just means the lights will come back on. The only way, light has to find darkness. And, no matter how far off the trail, you can be led home again. That's the beauty of these steps. And recovery, I believe, begins by simply facing our human imperfections. And with looking at those imperfections, we discover who we are. And when we first started this book study 24 lessons ago, I talked about that we were going on this investigation, and that investigation would lead us to a decision, and the decision would lead us to action. So investigation is to carefully do research to examine precise details. We did that. We draw a firm conclusion by the investigation was doctor's opinion, and then page 17 to 60, ending with the ABCs, 52 pages. If you don't make that investigation, you may never know what the problem is. for the past, 3, 4 months we've been here, we've used 35 pages to investigate just the problem. And once we knew the problem, we knew we were powerless. We used 13 pages in We Agnostics to investigate, you know, this power we need. How and where we find the power for 439. How we find the power for 9, where we find it deep down within us. So you either become convinced or you don't. And we looked at those ABCs last week, and if you are convinced, then it's time to make a decision. And that's to seek action. Investigate, decision, action, results. So we're on page 60. All right, in 1 second. All right. It says being convinced we're at step 3, which is that we decided to turn our will and life over to the care of God as we understood him. And we're going to spend a lot of time with the screen up tonight, especially for the next few minutes. And tonight, because we're going to really look at some facts. So it says here's what it says: made a decision to turn our will and life over to the care of God as we understood him. Right? So step 3 is very misunderstood. It's very misleading. From what we hear at meetings, you hear people say they're stuck on 3. And I'm gonna break it, step 3 down to 5 components. And this is what it's gonna look like. And these 5 components. So the first component is made a decision. So the main reason why step 3 is misleading is because people say they see the scary word God and believe step 3 is where you turn your life over to the care of God. Some even say you got to have God in order to do step 3. People, sit on step 3 because they're trying to figure out who and what God is. It's pretty, God reveals himself to us later. If we could turn life over to care of God in step 3, we would only need 3 steps. Our lives would be perfect, and we wouldn't be at a book study on Thursday nights. Well, it'd be a very short book study, but the book would be 63 pages long. It would end with the 3rd step prayer. But just made a decision to turn our world lives over to the care of God as we understood him. So what is a decision? It is a key element of the human process, human thought process. So what do we do in a decision? We analyze the situation, signs of uncertainty. We have to gather facts so we know what course of action to take. We never really gathered facts before. We just did stuff, right? Now I'm asking us to step back and make this decision. So it's a pre-thought plan prior to taking action. So step 3 is only a thought. It's not an action, it's a decision. You've heard a million times, probably hearing 3 frogs in a log. One makes a decision to jump off, how many are left in the log? People always want to say 3 or 2. It's 3. One only made a decision to jump off. And that's where we get confused. The most important component to move past any decision is action. So this action is always measured by the fact, decision is always measured by the fact we take action. And so many, I went to a 3rd step group last week, and I was dismayed how bizarre it was. And I just saw people had no clue that step 3 is just a decision to turn their lives over to care of God. Action is the key. So the decision to go to, like, if I make a decision to go to the grocery store, it does not magically transform me to the grocery store. I have to get in the car. Well, probably make a list, get in the car, drive there, walk into the store, grab a shopping cart. It's all part of the action they take. So if step 3 is just a decision, the big question is, when do we turn our life over to the care of God? And it's the second we hit the pen to paper in step 4. So when I have a hear a guy's third step prayer, I give him an inventory sheet and I have him write down a resentment. And I just said, you just started your journey of turning your life over to the care of God. So when the pen is the paper, steps 4 through 9 is the necessary action to turn your life over to the care of God. And when a person decides to turn their life over to the care of God, as they understood him, we must take the necessary action to turn it over. Step 3, for me, sounded a lot more harder than it was because of all the misleading BS I heard. I had a sponsor back in the 90s that said, you can't go, you got to believe in God now. And I was like, felt like I was in school again, Catholic school. It was all in my head that I must have God. And when my sponsor told me that my current sponsor told me that all I was doing was making a decision and I had to do, uh, in order to fulfill that, all I do is do the rest of the steps. It was no longer difficult. Until we act on that decision, all we have is a decision. Nothing changes, nothing changes. So the next one is to turn. Now, this is another interesting one. Turn means like a transfer of control. You're turning something, a shift in the opposite direction. We often hear a person say, oh, I lost my job. I'm just going to turn over. I'm getting a divorce. I guess I got to turn it over. And this is way more than turning a single situation over. This is a transfer of ownership, almost like we're turning our will and lives over, not a single situation. It's not the other side of a coin. And when you hit those situations, you don't have to turn your life over to God, because if you're doing inventory, it's always turned over, right? It's always turned over. And people say I turn my life over to God every day. Well, when did you take it back? That's the thing. And the third component is our will and our lives. So our will is our thinking, and our lives is our actions. So what do we inventory in step 4? Thinking, resentments, fears. Those are thinking. Actions, harm, sex conduct. And we make a decision to turn our thinking and actions over to the care of God. Or, if the simplest terms, our thinking and actions over the care of the steps. So it made a lot of sense there for me. The other one is over to the care of God. Now, this is one that took me a while to figure this out, because what does that mean? And you can't figure it out until you experience the care of God. And you just know what it means. And it might be different for everybody a little bit. But what does care? Care means to look after and tend to the needs of somebody or something, right? Think of a caretaker. When my grandmother got to the point where she couldn't do things for herself anymore, we needed a caretaker. We interview people. We needed someone that was, my grandma was absent and incompetent at times. So we needed someone that was can be competent, trustworthy, available, loving, and above all, to care for her life, and could do for her what she couldn't do for herself. If you take that caretaking aspect and you put God in there, that's where you start to recognize the finite stuff, the limited stuff, unlimited stuff. I mean, it becomes limitless. God becomes the caretaker of our thinking and actions, not us. We fail with that. The last one is God as you understood him. Now, understand something is to comprehend something, to gain awareness of something, to understand it. And I always say, back in the books, is abandon yourself to God as you understand God. But I like to throw in there, or as you don't understand God. Because for me, I didn't understand God until I did the steps, the action. Then I started to make sense. This is a comprehension of God. And God as you understood him means a spiritual power of your conception rather than another person's. Your own personal comprehension, understanding, no matter how limited it is. And when you take that action, the more you understand. And the more you understand means the more you've experienced in God. The more you experience God, the more you understand God. 4 to 9 is that action. Remember, 4 to 9 is also in step 10. So that tells me if I'm doing 4 to 9 step 10 the rest of my life, as things crop up, practicing those principles in my affairs, I'm always going to understand God more and more and more. How I feel about God isn't the same way I felt about God a year ago, or 6 months ago, or 3 weeks ago. It's always something different. So step 3 is a declaration or affirmative action. It's kind of like this. Here's the way to say it is step 1 is my diagnosis. Here's what's wrong with me. Step 2 is like the prescription, right? Here's what you need to do. Step 3 is a decision to follow the various steps prescribed by the physician in order to get well. Step 4 is starting to take that prescription. The beginning of wellness. The beginning of wellness. I'm going to close this down really quick. So, if you go ahead and do 4 through 9, somewhere in the middle of that, you will begin to have a spiritual awakening because you will experience God and you will start experiencing the promises and change, entire psychic change. That's what that means, entire psychic change. Here's a great step 3 story. I almost forgot about this. I saw this today. So sponsor, talks to sponsee every day, and this guy is just dragging his feet. The sponsor's starting to get a little mad. The sponsor, gets a call from the sponsee, and he's restless, irritable, discontent. He's mad because I'm not getting the results in the book. And the sponsor says, have you started step 4? And the sponsee's all, no, I'm doing that 3rd step prayer daily and nothing's happening. And the sponsor goes, So he gets sponsor, and he tells the sponsee to go grab a cookbook. Sponsee comes back and has a cookbook in his hand. And he goes, open the chocolate cake. And so he reads the ingredients and how to mix it, how to put it in the oven, the timing and all that. And when he's through, the sponsor asks him to read it again and again. And he says, call me back tomorrow and read it again. Calls him back next day, reads it again. Finally, the sponsor gets really mad a couple of days later and asks him, what does this have to do with me not getting results in the big book? And the sponsor asks him, can I have a piece of that cake? See, the sponsee says, no, I can't give that piece of that cake. And the sponsor says, why? Because I haven't done the action of making the cake. And sponsor laughs out loud, and says, exactly. Now do you see why you're not getting results in the big book? And I love that. Back to page 60. The first requirement, now I'm talking about requirements now, is to be convinced, that's certain, right, that any lifelong self-will could hardly be a success. Ooh, now they're getting somewhere. So this is where the book has its first big shift. This is where the book completely shifts away from drinking to spiritual. From this point on, it's all about personality change and spiritual awakening to bring about recovery. From this point on, you're not going to hear too much about, people putting whiskey in their milk, or, we heard no more Fred for a while. Any of those stories like that. Now it's about, recovery. So the question here is, what is success? Success means to achieve a goal. What's the opposite of success? Kind of? No, failure, which means to not achieve a goal. When I fail at something, I did not achieve the goal. He's nicely saying that any life-run self-will is failure. Let's go back to the bedevilments on page 52. And here's an example of results, of any life running on self-will is failure. So it's in 3rd paragraph, 2nd sentence, 52. It says, we were having trouble with personal relationships, failure. We couldn't control our emotional natures, failure. We're prey to misery and depression, failure. We couldn't make a living, failure. We had a feeling of uselessness, failure. We're full of fear, failure. We're unhappy, failure. We could have seemed to help to other people, failure. It's pretty harsh, but it's true. But what causes these failures? It's like a better question might be, why do we get upset so easy? Why do we blame? Why do we get anger? Why do we have rage, road rage? You know, why do we hold on resentments from 30 years ago or criticize people and pick them apart and be judgmental? Why do we always compare ourselves to others? Why do you know, why do we fear things that are most likely never going to happen? Why do we seek revenge and harm? Better question is like, why do we hold on to the past with guilt, hate? Why are we greedy? You know, why are we so judgmental of others and ourselves? Like for me, I mean, why do I have to be right or get the last word in? That's what people told me. I said, why do you have to be right? Why do you have the last word in? You know, it's because I was holding on to things and not letting them go. But why? Why did I have misery, self-pity, and depression? You know, why do we really seek ease and comfort from alcohol? Now, these things can go with anybody. You don't have to be alcoholic to have those things. And a regular drinker can, oh, I'm going to have a drink and I'm going to unwind and get away from my guilt, my jealousy and stuff. But when we drink, we erase everything and we keep drinking, drinking, drinking because we have the allergy. But the real question is, what is driving those thoughts and actions? And so the average person, anybody, most likely will never know why they go from fear to anger to resentment, back to fear, to harm, to fear, to guilt, to fear, to self-pity, to depression, to fear, over and over and over again. And not only is it impossible to see, it's really hard to see the stuff even approaching. We never know where it comes from, which means we never know what drives our anger. Sometimes, like where it shocks you almost and where, that horror, rage, we go from zero, there's no middle ground. You're calm and also angry. But they never know why they have fear. It takes away that graceful thinking, and they never know where the destruction comes from. When I did therapy, oh, it must be the way I was raised. Nope. Must be my belief system. That's what they would tell me. It's your belief system you have. So it must be our belief system. Must be the way we're raised. Nope. Must be because we're selfish. Nope. What I'm talking about runs way deeper than all those things combined. Matter of fact, selfishness and our belief system are driven by the exact same thing. What really drives us? And the answer lies within every single one of us. Any life run on self-will can hardly be a success. The question is, what is self-will? So self-will is our unconscious devotion. Say unconscious would mean unaware. So unconscious devotion to our social, security, and sexual needs for survival. Self-will in this book is called, well, not in this book, it's called in 12, it calls it misdirected instincts. And misdirected means led in the wrong direction or misused. We can use them correctly, but misdirected instincts, the book also refers it as self. It's part of the exact nature of our wrongs, our defects of character, our shortcomings. Our instincts, the thing about them is they're natural. They're not learned. And when do they first kick in? It's a moment your instincts kick in when you pop out and you're a baby and you come out screaming. Why? Because of fear. You're no longer safe. So we're born with them and kicking, they hit us right away. As we mature, they help cope with our lives. We're going to go on 12 and 12. If you have one, if you don't, we're on page 42, the 12 and 12. And even though we're on step 3, I'm bringing this part from step 4 in here. because we really want to see why we're doing this decision. So it says in 42, creation gave us instincts for a purpose, which means they're God-given. Without them, we wouldn't be complete human beings. If men and women didn't exert themselves to be secure in their persons, made no effort to harvest food or construct shelter, there would be no survival. So we can agree with all that. If they didn't reproduce, the earth wouldn't be populated, of course. If there were no social instinct, if men and women cared nothing for society or of one another, there would be no society. So that makes sense. So these desires for sex relations, for material and emotional security, and for companionship are perfectly necessary, right, and surely God-given. Now that's proper use of instincts. And I've been told when you have proper use of instincts, there's not really a proper use of instincts. It's just living life sanely, rightly. Now, look what he says next. Yet, these instincts, so necessary for our existence, often far exceed their proper functions. Powerful, blindly, many times suddenly, they drive us, dominate us, and insist upon ruling our lives. Our desires for sex, for material and emotional security, and for an important place in society often tyrannize us. Now, tyrannize us means it's like the tyrant. It's, that boss of the tyrant. So it's an old word, means to rule over with power and authority. And that's like, we have a boss that the tyrant boss that abuses control. So often tyrannizes. What when thus out of joint, man's our natural desire cause him great trouble, practically all the trouble there is. No human beings leave anyone out, however good, is exempt from these troubles, means free from these troubles. Nearly every this is the part, most important line in the whole 12 and 12. Nearly every serious emotional problem can be seen as a case of misdirected instincts. When that happens, our great natural assets, the instincts, have turned into physical and mental liabilities. Pretty deep when they're misdirected. I'm going to read from a letter Bill Wilson wrote from 1954. This is Bill Wilson. It's not the 12 and 12. I think. The idea keeps persisting that the instincts are primary bad and are roadblocks before which all spirituality falters. I believe the difference between good and evil is not the difference between spiritual and physical man. It is the difference between proper and improper use of instincts. Recognition and right channeling of these instincts is the essence of achieving wholeness. I love that because he's saying, so proper, recognition, awareness of instincts is what he's saying there, recognition, and right channeling, once your awareness, you channel them, of instincts is the essence of achieving completeness, wholeness. So these instincts drive our thinking, our beliefs, our theories, ideas. But when misdirected, they erupt through our lives. They disrupt everyday activities. So misdirected instincts is when our natural instincts, which are meant to serve us well, become distorted and direct us in a harmful way. They create every resentment, every harm, every fear, guilt, everything. So they drive us to complete insanity. And we bury painful emotions inside of us and mask it with alcohol and everything else. But recognizing misdirected instincts is essential to addressing these underlying issues that we never figured out why we have them. We just want to write ourselves off. This is the way I'm just angry. That's just the way I am. No. So when we become aware of our instincts, become aware of what brings our pain. On the flip side, the alternative of being unaware of instincts is to continue to live in pain. We don't want to be there anymore. So I need to grow spiritually. I cannot grow spiritually without being aware of instincts and learning how to detach myself from them, which is steps 4 to 6. But to truly understand what we're turning our life over to, why we're turning our life over to the care of God, is one of the big parts of that is understanding instincts just a little bit before I do step 3, just a little bit. So I truly understand what turning one life over to God means. So it's vitally important to understand the instincts before you make your third step decision and begin step 4. That's just a simple ideas of them. So, so I'm going to put up just to show you what we'll be looking at here. Oops. I'm going to show you a 4-step sheet, and this is 4-step sheets that we'll be using over the course of step 4. It's just a template, but you see on here, social, security, sex, ambitions, personal relations, self-esteem, pride, emotional security, material security, sex relations, and ambitions, social, security, sex. Those are all in the big book. And that's why we're looking at this. So to understand these instincts, we're gonna look at its main components, right? And I'm gonna put up the instincts chart here, and this comes within our 4-step. And so I also call these the 7 pieces of self, right? So social instinct is our interactions with others and yourself. So social and natural desires for pride, our natural desire for self-esteem, our natural desire for personal relations. Our social instincts is, why we concern for one another. So it's a natural desire all humans have. And humans and animals we both have similar security and sex instincts, but we differ is that we interact on a social level. Animals do not have self-esteem or pride, and their relations with each other is way different, right? So the first one we're going to look at here is pride. It's my view how others see me, what others think of me. So I like to call it also fear of what others think of me, concern about others' opinions and judgments that helps create the front we want others to see. Healthy pride, let me mention that first, makes us, to do our best to reach our goals. Maybe it's in dieting or getting healthy, or maybe my neighbor mows his lawn, so I go mow my lawn. Strive for success. But when misdirected, this is where pride leads to difficulty. So what happens when it's misdirected? We fear what others think of us. So we turn our lives over to others. We are afraid people will see the real us as, might know the truth about us. We fear being rejected. We want to be recognized and run the show. We always seek approval from others. We disregard others' needs. All we care about is our own. We lose sight of our goals, our ambitions. By trying to make demands, the correct response from others, we become dishonest, and we overuse lies only we believe. The end result is we're restless, irritable, and discontent. And restless, irritable, and discontent means I got a high anxiety, I'm easily pissed off, and I'm not satisfied. That's the end result of pride. Those things aren't one at a time, separate days. They're all 3 together. If I'm easily pissed off, if I have high anxiety and be easily pissed off, I'm not going to be satisfied. And the next one is self-esteem. Criticism doesn't always have to come from other people. It's right within us. That's what self-esteem is. It's the evaluation of self. When self-esteem is affected, it can create a high point. We call that high self-esteem. Viewing myself as better than others. There's some people look at high self-esteem as good because in having that confidence and stuff like that, but we're alcoholics. We don't need that. We got God. We don't turn the lights over to care ourselves. We're looking at high self-esteem from that, viewing ourselves better than others. It's an inflated sense of superiority over others, arrogance, entitlement, high self-worth, narcissistic, and ego. It's ego. We're constantly judging others and being judgmental. Here's an example. Let's say my neighbor makes me mad, and my self-esteem would be high. I'm better than him. Who the hell does he think he is? That feeling of superiority. How many times do you have a resentment? and you're resentful because the guy made you mad. He goes, this guy's an idiot. What does he know? That's your, so your self-esteem be high in that resentment. I've caught myself for years having, and I'm sure some of us having high self-esteem meetings. I would be very judgmental with arrogant, egotistical superiority when a person would speak with no program, roll my eyes. This person has no program. They don't know what they're talking about. And I was in a meeting once and I told my sponsor, and this is why sponsors are great. I go, God, listen to this guy talk. And the guy spoke and I said, see, and he goes, man, he goes, you know how hard it is to be that guy? No program and that miserable. He goes, you're not judging another person in the room, you're defining yourself. I was like, so what learned it was blocking me from seeing the simple truth that if this person is sick, how can I be helpful to him? I can't look at people as idiots and this and that when I turn my life over to God. I preach peace of mind and kindness, yet this guy's, not this guy because he's not doing the program. I got away from that by doing more inventory. So when self-esteem is affected, it can also cause a low point, and that's low self-esteem. Think about when you have resentment that makes you feel low. Oh man, I screwed up again. Viewing myself as less than others, the deep sense of worthlessness. We're not good enough. Doubt, self-doubt. We're constantly questioning our abilities, focusing on the flaws and mistakes we make, all that stuff. The example could be another resentment against the same guy, and he says, critical things towards me, hurts my feelings, and my self-esteem is low. I don't feel good enough. And what does that lead me? Self-pity, depression. So when misdirected, both these are kind of combined, is our moods always high or low, up and down. I mean, I think I'm better or less than, remember the big book says about fear. Either, either he's shy or not drawn to others, or is he be a noisy good fellow trying to crave attention? I always found out the ones that are craving attention or arrogant, or these are the ones in low self-esteem. Pretty interesting. But our mood's always up and down. We run over to satisfy our needs. We feel others are always looking and judging us. We compete with others. We believe we're better than people. Our way is the only way. We get angry when people don't do what we want and seek revenge. We got to be right. And then there's a low part. We think we're less than others, constantly comparing ourselves to others, no confidence, and not good enough, failure, right? It's bedevilment. We become, sad or angry, whether it's do not praise us, leading to resentment and then harm. And in result, if we either be the center of attention or we isolate, either one leads to depression. So what do we need? Some people say, I say drop the self out of it because anything in this book has self we don't need. We need centeredness, not self-centeredness. So we need esteem. Esteem means to hold a person in high regard. Like I have esteem towards that person's kindness. It helps me see a person's qualities and not pick apart their defects. And what we need to have esteem, which, it's I want to have it, I want to look at their qualities and not their defects. Exactly. I mean, to get rid of low self-esteem, though, we need to do esteemable acts. Until we start doing good, we'll never believe we are good enough. Some, esteemable act is hold the door open for someone or help another person. That's good stuff. Good Samaritan, right? Great stuff. But there's no esteemable act better than sponsorship. Sponsoring others is a remedy for self-esteem. And so many people are so depressed in the program and they do all the steps, but they don't sponsor, which means they're not doing the steps. Because sponsoring is a secret remedy to low self-esteem. The next one is personal relations. Personal relations. So it's our desire to have to have personal relations with others. Simple, what it says. It's in their DNA. It's in our program. We want to have a network of people. Personal relations creates an inner circle of support. Look at, I mean, think AA fellowship, right? I mean, it may not always be what we want it to be, but it's like, there's a network of support. It's a network of people coming together, friends. Same thing if you're going to play cards with your buddies or going to the movies or family barbecues on Sundays or just, you know, bonded between individuals. When we need personal relationships in our lives, on the job, at home, in public, it's through those personal relationships we learn to help others, right? So when misdirected, what happens? We attack others. We make demands on others. We expect others to always do for us. We get resentful when others don't do what we want. We're always trying to please others. And what happens then? We lose sight of our own goals, right? And most important, it's in our DNA to blame people. So we blame others for our problems, and resent them. And we get envious, jealous. We're always in compete with others. We harm others to drive in others and drive people out of our lives. I went into the hospital 2 months before 6 months before I got sober. I got beat up and, to a pulp, went to the hospital, and I couldn't even get my friends to see me nor my parents to come see me. Nobody. It was all alone. I sat there for 2 days. 2 years later, I'm 2 years. I get 2 years of sobriety. I had back surgery, and 86 people came and saw me for the days I was in the hospital. Quite a difference between driving people out of my life. It's the beauty of this program. So the end results of, misdirected personal relations is we isolate and become lonely. And that is not the way our social network is supposed to work. It goes against the norm, the God-given aspect. The next one we have is security, safe from danger. People always ask me, what's the biggest culprit of fear? And they always say pride. I say, no, it's always security, because security is safe from danger, right? I remember it used to be a burglar alarm company. They would, by the school, and above the alarm would say, the feeling of being safe and protected. That's security. What makes human beings feel safe and protected? A natural fear called security. Natural fear. It's for our well-being, for our health. So emotional security is stability of ourselves and others, right? Emotions are strong responses to these instincts, right? And every day we experience, sadness, anger, joy, fear, resentment, guilt. Somewhere we fit some, hoping not every day we experience the negative ones. We don't, but we want our emotions to be safe and calm. And emotional security is the measure of our emotional state, to feel safe and grounded in our emotions. And step forward, we're taking our emotional security and we're looking at when it was affected. So I have a resentment. When's it not affected? Always emotional security. So when misdirected, the most common symptom of emotional security is self-pity. That's the reoccurring presence of displeasure towards who? You. It's also anxiety, the feeling of worry, uneasiness, nervousness concerning that big future event, the worst thing that's going to happen. So I became emotionally insecure, and it's a feeling of uneasy nervousness. So we get angry and have defensive reactions, but the end result is depression. And what's depression? Is a feeling, it's a low mood that causes a person to feel hopeless and overwhelmed, affecting everyday activities. Gets its name from the lowering of salt words, depressed, pressing up, life is pressing upon me. And what did fear do to your emotional security? From a harm standpoint, how many people have you robbed of their emotional security? Like my mom made amends to her, and she said, I'm just glad we're not scraping off the sidewalk somewhere. I realized I robbed their emotional security. So one thing I want to mention, people do this a lot in the program, is they think that to feel better, they got to have things. They got to own things. They gotta feel good. The only security we need is what is security inside of us, and follow that. And that's what we're talking about, material security. Having stability and reliable source necessary for a comfortable and secure life. So financial security, think about this stuff. Financial resources, we want, decent income, especially in this day and age. We want some money in the bank savings that makes us feel secure. To have that, we need a stable, secure job. We need, safe and reliable place to live, access of, good food and clean water, and we need quality medical and health services, education, necessary resources. So things we need for survival: money, property, employment, shelter, food, transportation, cars, clothing, even technology. So this propels us to go get a job. It makes us save money, prepare for the future without fear, have things that feel secure. All of us have had different needs to feel secure, but with this mixed directive, what's going to happen is I need this stuff to feel good now. So we always believe we need more of something. So we prioritize material possessions and wealth over important things in life, including family and friends. Remember others to get what we need. We fear we never have enough, cause financial stress and anxiety. We pursue beyond what we have. We drive ourselves beyond our needs. We take down others with us. We become dishonest. We resent and harm others who get in the way of our material needs. What's the end result? Unhappy, dissatisfied, unfulfilled, difficulty finding my place in life. Unhappy, dissatisfied, unfulfilled. I feel like I have no place. Restless, irritable, discontent. Same idea. That's the way I'm going to feel. If I'm always, nothing's ever good enough. And so when I have a resentment, that I got fired from my job, it affected my material security. All sorts of things. I get a divorce, it affects my material security. The next one is sex, reproduction, and/or pleasure. We all know how to reproduce. We know it's satisfying and feels good, but it can create problems, as we try to get more of it, meaning we can hurt other people. Sex relations is relations with sex, thinking or action, right? Sometimes it's thinking is the worst part. So physical and intimate sexual engagement between two individuals is what it is. And we all have sex relations and sex drives, and animals do not have sex relations. They just reproduce. They have no choice. They find a partner and go do their thing. We have free will, well, we try to make intelligent decisions, but based on sex, and such as choosing our partners and people we like, and the ability to choose can cause sex problems. So if my sex instinct is misdirected, we're always pursuing it, which means I'm never satisfied with it. Meaning there's anger involved, there's jealousy, there's revenge. We hurt others to get what we want. We get involved with the wrong people. We get stuck with the wrong people. Sometimes that's our excuse. So I got stuck with her or him. Well, maybe they're stuck with you, but we have at the wrong time with the wrong reasons with the wrong people, and we make choices that hurt others, and we become dishonest, hiding sex relations from people we love. Infidelity, of course, that's a harm. We betray trust, and ends in guilt, shame, and regret. So we create false standards. When we don't get what we want, we get what? Resentful, retaliate, and creating emotional trauma, even physical abuse. Then a result, like I said at the beginning, we're always discontent. We're never satisfied with our sex life if you're running on instincts, misdirected instincts. The last one is ambitions. And you have social or future plans for myself and others, pride, self-esteem, personal relations, material security, future plans for money, property, employment. Emotional security, future plans for stability, yourself and others. Sex, goals or plans regarding sex. So ambitions is my future. Goals we strive to achieve in life to reach our full potential, reach our dreams. Any instinct, when misdirected, can lead to change of a course of events in a matter of a split second, affecting our future plans and our goals. Let's say you have big plans and a future goal, goals for the future. Let's say I'm going to move to another state and take this great job. And an event, comes along and changes those big plans. In a matter of seconds, it's gone. Oh my God, what do I do now? And how's a resentment against someone ever change the course of your life? How's a harm, like cheating on someone, or does it change the course of your life? Has fear ever steered you away from your ideals, stuff you want, what we want to be? Has pride ever altered a potential relationship? Have you ever quit a job because you believe you need to make more money? Has losing a job ever made you feel stuck and frustrated? Has high self-esteem ever destroyed a lifelong friendship or a marriage? Has low self-esteem ever left you without direction? Has a relationship ending ever completely well, think about when a relationship would end and you had to, all of a sudden you're sitting there all alone in your house trying to reassess your future. My God, yesterday was great. What happened? Then it resolves our plans, our goals, our dreams, our ideals, our future get changed because our social security, sexual interests are misdirected. And what motivates instincts? Go to the fourth step on page 65 real quick, and there's a little preview of step 4. This is kind of a preview too. But if you look at the instincts on step 4 in the third column on 65, you see fear is bracket next to Mr. Brown and all that. So fear is this basic survival mechanism, motivates the instincts. It's like the lubricant of a car engine, the oil of the engine. It motivates these. These instincts are motivated by fear, misdirected. So like the thing is what happens, people always want to ask, what happens if I stay driven by misdirected instincts? You stay guided by the ego. Is this those 7 pieces of self I just went over? That's it, make up our ego. It's like all little pieces that form these 7 pieces form it. Your identity is who you think you are, me, myself, and I, the false identity. It's not who we really are. And that ego will make us believe I am what I want. I am what I have. I am what I do. I want others to think what I want others to think of me. I'm better than others. So the ego lives in what's called duality, meaning another word for separation is ego. I mean, is another word for duality is separation, like a yin and yang type of thing. Duality, good and bad. So it lives in good and bad. I'm separate. So what that duality means is an ego. I'm separated from everyone else. I'm separated from God. So we're dominated by ego, and if it keeps us locked away in its own little world, and sadly, many will forgo the spiritual approach, stay stuck in ego. And the spiritual awakening, this is about dissolving the ego so we can create a life that feels good inside, but not just built around looking good on the outside, looking good in the inside. If you live on instincts, ego will always be who you are. You'll be that identity. You'll be identified for it. It'll be the aura that you put out. So when we do step 3 and fall into step 4, we start to become aware of these instincts more and more. To do 10, you start doing it, you start understanding more and more. But we start taking a good look at our resentments, fear, and sex conduct. And we see the truth of who we really are. And that ego slowly fades. It comes around here and there, but it's not who we're identified as anymore. When we are released from the bondage of self, we discover who we really are, your real identity. Our instincts are deep down inside of us and direct our human wants and needs. And we learned in step 2 that our own spirit is where deep down within us that guides our spirit and directions and needs. So that means I got 2 things within me fighting for direction. But one of them is just going to sit back and go, they'll come, they'll come to me when I need them. And they're going to sit back, and that spirit's going to sit back and watch us try to get stuff from the outside to fulfill wants and needs. You can't have 2 cores. You can't have instincts, misdirected instincts in God. So you're either a host to God or a host to instincts. So you can live on misdirected instincts or try to defeat them by using misdirected instincts. It's like self-will can overcome self-will, right? I can say fighting anything or anyone and stay completely unaware. But the mind that creates the problem will never solve the problem. Self-will can overcome self-will. And the alternative fight of overcoming anything in this program is making a decision to turn life over to the care of God. We relinquish our self-will to the care of God by taking action of 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9, and living in 10, 11, 12. Those steps will align your personality and your character, and you'll be a reflection of the spirit within you. And that means, you're no longer trying to align your personality and character with your instincts and what you think you need. And that's why we change. Change in course, change in direction changes our life forever. Because when that direction of your life changes, you change. And when we change, how many people do you change? Think about that. When you change, how many people do you change or influence? I'm going to close with this. Is in the rooms, we hear people say, I'm stuck in the isms, the alcoholisms part. And when they say that, they're referring to wanting to drink. One of my mentors in the program called it insufficient spiritual maturity. The isms is insufficient spiritual maturity. If I started using and drinking at age 13 and I get clean at 39, I have the emotional maturity of a 13-year-old. Drinking and using slows down my emotional development because I've been self-medicating. I never had to deal with anything, just go have a drink. All of a sudden, we get sober, we're like, oh, I tried drunk, I'm rested, because we have no emotional development. With emotional maturity comes spiritual maturity. Simply knowing right, that's more than knowing right from wrong. It's knowing right from wrong within, knowing when I should do something or I shouldn't do something. I'm following that instinctual voice in me. Spiritual maturity is the ability to listen to the voice. Where we never had spiritual maturity because we insisted on following outside ourselves, or bring our instincts out from us. With the voice of God consciousness, we must achieve awareness of God consciousness because it is God consciousness and only God consciousness that's capable of exceeding these animal instincts. So we must look within and find what the book calls the great reality. And then we find sufficient spiritual maturity instead of insufficient spiritual maturity. Sufficient. Human beings are controlled by instincts. We have been, always will be, whether we realize it or not. Our basic instincts govern all these decisions. That's why the steps are for anyone. Lifelong believer, unbeliever, agnostic, the angry, even the normie. That's why Big Book Compendium is what it is. We're not affiliated with AA, CA, DA, or any of these other groups because it's all the love we share for the Big Book because we believe in this program. It's for the dry alcoholic. the dry addict, all these people, anyone else in between, all inclusive. One of the greatest truths is, my friend Derek said this perfectly: what I'm aware of, I can control, but what I'm not aware of will always control me. The alternative of being aware of misdirected instincts is they will always control you. Being unaware of them, they always drive my life, meaning we have no clue. We have no clue. I didn't know. This is foreign to me. So we have a choice. Could you be driven by instincts or let God drive your life? Easy choice, right? What's your choice? What's your choice? That's the question. If you were, thinking, how can God help me? Is that God speaking or is that instincts? You're thinking this guy Steve is full of crap. Is that God? Is that God talking or is that instincts? What's your choice? A better question is, when my sponsor said to me years ago, how free do you want to be? We actually also said, do you want to be right or you want to be free? Nothing humbles a person more than misdirected instincts. And so know this: our pain does not stop when we stop drinking or when we raise our hand at a meeting. Many people believe they always be this lost alcoholic, lost soul struggling. And it's the biggest stigma that we have in Alcoholics Anonymous and other programs is about alcohol and drugs. Should be called Emotions Anonymous, because we're simply, we have a set of principles to follow so we can discover who we are. And we're not these emotions. It's not a journey to get, that gets better. It's a journey of getting better, 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 better. There comes a point we must set aside everything we think we know. You must learn something new. So to let go of something old, you must take on something that's new. I always use this analogy. This represents what's old. This represents what's new. So I'm holding on to what's old. Here comes what's new. I got to put down what's old and take what's new. That's when change happens. I'm going to close with a quote by Walter Anderson. Our lives only improve when we are willing to take chances, and the first and most difficult risks as we take is to be honest with ourselves. It's time to get honest and really look at yourself. So, next week we won't be here next week because we're taking a week off because it's a holiday here, and half of us won't be here. So we always take that week off if a holiday falls on this. I'll get in big trouble. So in a couple of weeks we'll be back and we'll discuss more about instincts. We discuss the actor.